The two-story house in the suburbs of Bridgeport, Connecticut, was a small but warm home for Rachel Harper and her son Michael. For 3 years since losing her husband David in a car accident, Rachel had been raising her son as a single mother. Working as a manager at the local family restaurant, Sunnyside Cafe, she wasn't wealthy, but she was content with the peaceful life she shared with Michael. 10-year-old Michael was a boy with brown eyes inherited from his father and a friendly smile. He had many friends at school and played as a pitcher on the baseball team. For Rachel, her son was everything in her life, and the time they spent together at dinner and helping with homework was an irreplaceable treasure. However, about 6 months ago, Michael's health began to show concerning changes. At first, it was mild stomach pain. Sometimes he would rest in the school nurse's office and come home feeling fine. Rachel thought it was something temporary, common during growing years. But the symptoms gradually worsened, with severe headaches and vomiting added to the mix. Holding her son as he suffered through the night, Rachel found herself rushing to the emergency room more and more frequently. Dr. Smith, their pediatrician, examined Michael carefully, but despite repeated blood tests and X-rays, the cause couldn't be identified. When the symptoms became severe, Michael would be hospitalized. After discharge, the symptoms would reappear after a while, leading to another hospitalization in a repeating cycle. Rachel reduced her work hours and devoted herself to caring for her son. During this difficult time, Rachel's mother Dorothy became a reliable source of support. Dorothy had years of experience working as a nurse and actively offered to help care for her grandson. She was someone who valued appearances and had a good reputation among the neighbors as an exemplary mother. While Rachel was away at work, her mother took the initiative to look after Michael. Living with her mother was Rachel's sister Jessica. Jessica had been laid off from her job a few months earlier and was currently unemployed. She was emotionally unstable and sometimes became upset, but she seemed to care for her nephew Michael. Rachel was deeply grateful that her mother and sister worked together to care for Michael. One Sunday afternoon, when Rachel returned from shopping, she found Michael sitting on the sofa in the living room, flanked by his grandmother and aunt. The three seemed to be having some conversation, but they suddenly fell quiet when Rachel appeared. Michael looked pale and didn't have his usual bright expression. "Welcome home, Rachel," her mother Dorothy stood up to greet her. "Michael seems a bit tired, so it might be better to let him rest early." "Yes, I think so." "Thank you, Mom." Rachel approached her son and placed her hand on his forehead. He seemed to have a slight fever. Her sister Jessica silently picked up her bag and began preparing to leave with their mother. "I'll come check on him again tomorrow," their mother said, and the two quickly headed home. That night, Michael complained of severe stomach pain again, and Rachel rushed to the emergency room in a panic. While receiving an IV drip on the hospital bed, Michael held tightly to his mother's hand. "Mama, I'm scared," Michael whispered in a small voice. "It's okay, Michael. Mama is here with you," Rachel answered, gently stroking her son's hair. But deep inside, her anxiety about her son's unexplained illness was growing day by day. The next morning, after spending the night at the hospital, Rachel's mother and sister appeared with worried expressions. "How was it?" her mother asked. "He seems a little better. But the doctor still doesn't know what's causing it," Rachel answered with a tired expression. "We're here for you, so don't worry," Jessica said in a gentle voice. "Rachel, you have work to do, so leave it to us." While grateful for her family's support, Rachel felt an inexplicable unease deep in her heart. As Michael's hospitalizations continued to repeat, Rachel began to notice a strange pattern. Almost without fail, her son's condition would worsen after her mother and sister visited. At first, she thought it was coincidence, but as it happened repeatedly, she began to question whether the timing was too frequent to be mere chance. One Tuesday evening, when Rachel returned from work, she found Michael lying on the sofa. His face was pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead. "What's wrong, Michael?" Rachel rushed to her son in alarm. Grandma and Aunt Jessica were here. But then I started feeling sick, Michael answered in a weak voice. Did they already go home? Yes. When I said I felt sick, they left right away. Rachel placed her hand on Michael's forehead. He didn't seem to have a fever, but his expression showed signs of anxiety. That night, Michael vomited again, and he had to miss school the next day. When the weekend came, her mother and Jessica visited again. How is Michael doing? Her mother asked with concern. He's been feeling a bit better since yesterday, Rachel replied, and Jessica made a suggestion. Since we'll be with Michael, why don't you go shopping or something, Rachel? You must be exhausted from all the caregiving. Rachel was indeed tired. She thought it would be fine to leave them with family for the time it took to go to the nearby supermarket. Well then, I'll ask you to watch him for about an hour. While selecting groceries at the supermarket, Rachel enjoyed having some time to herself for the first time in a while. But when she finished shopping and returned home, once again Michael's condition was strange. This time he was complaining of severe stomach pain. What happened? He was fine just a little while ago, Rachel said in surprise, and her mother shook her head. He suddenly started having pain. Children's health can change quickly. That evening, while staying with Michael at the emergency room, Rachel found herself deep in thought. The timing was too good, or rather, too bad. Was it really just coincidence that her son became ill every time her mother and sister visited? The following week, when Michael had temporarily recovered, Rachel created an opportunity to talk with her son alone. Michael, how do you feel when Grandma and Aunt Jessica come over? Michael thought for a moment, then answered in a small voice, Aunt Jessica scares me. Scares you? Why? I don't really know, but the way she looks at me is scary. And when Mama isn't here, she says strange things. Strange things like what? Michael hesitated. She told me not to tell Mama. Rachel's heart began to race. Michael, you can tell Mama anything. You don't need to keep secrets. But Michael wouldn't say anything more. He showed a fearful expression and tried to change the subject. Rachel didn't press her son further, but her suspicions were approaching certainty. That night, Rachel researched various things on the internet. Signs of child abuse, the effects of psychological abuse, and the concealment of abuse by family members. The more she read, the more shocked she became at how Michael's symptoms and situation matched. Having made up her mind, Rachel purchased a small hidden camera. She decided to install them in Michael's room and the living room to record what happened when she wasn't there. Though she wasn't good with technology, she was prepared to do anything to protect her son. The first weekend after installing the cameras, Rachel lied about having errands and went out. She actually spent time at a nearby cafe and returned home several hours later. Her mother and sister greeted her with their usual kind smiles, but Michael had shut himself in his room. That night, Rachel checked the recorded footage. The first hour passed without incident. However, in the footage from 30 minutes after Rachel had left, she witnessed a shocking scene. Jessica was hurling harsh words at Michael. It's because of you that Rachel is suffering. Pretending to be sick to get attention. Your father disappeared because you're a bad child. Michael cried and denied it, but Jessica continued the verbal abuse mercilessly. Even more terrifying, when her mother Dorothy came out of the room and saw the scene, she didn't try to stop it. Instead, she said, Jessica is right. You need to be a better child, adding to Jessica's actions. The footage continued. There was a scene where Jessica grabbed Michael's arm tightly, digging her nails in. Even when Michael cried out in pain, the two women laughed. And the most shocking part was when Jessica brought something from the kitchen and tried to make Michael drink it. Michael resisted, but their mother forcibly held him down while Jessica made him drink the liquid. Immediately after that, Michael began complaining of stomach pain. In the footage, Jessica and their mother wore satisfied expressions. Rachel closed the laptop with trembling hands. Tears wouldn't stop flowing. To think that her own mother and sister had been doing such cruel things to her beloved son. She didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right in front of her. The next morning, Rachel took time off work to visit a law office. She explained the situation to Anderson, a lawyer specializing in family law, and showed him the recorded footage. "This is clearly child abuse," Attorney Anderson said with a stern expression. "Not only physical abuse, but psychological abuse, and possibly the use of some kind of drugs. You should immediately report this to the police and Child Protective Services." "But they're my mother and sister," Rachel was confused. "Blood relations don't matter. Your child's safety is the top priority. Let's gather more evidence and take proper legal action." Rachel followed the lawyer's advice and decided to first keep detailed records. She organized Michael's symptoms, the dates and times of her mother and sister's visits, and the hidden camera footage. At the same time, she decided to consult with Dr. Smith, Michael's attending physician. When she showed the footage to Dr. Smith at the hospital, the doctor's expression became serious. "This explains why Michael's symptoms have been so inconsistent. There's a possibility of drug poisoning. Let's conduct detailed tests." The results of new blood tests detected trace amounts of laxatives and painkillers in Michael's system. Because small amounts had been administered over a long period, serious health damage had been avoided, but continued use could have been life-threatening. With this evidence in hand, Rachel finally resolved to take action. To protect her beloved son and for the sake of justice, she decided to fight. Even if the opponents were family members, this was unforgivable. Before going to the police station, Rachel had one last conversation with Michael. "Mama will protect you. I won't let you be scared anymore." For the first time, her son showed a relieved expression and hugged his mother tightly. On Thursday, after finishing her afternoon shift at Sunnyside Cafe, Rachel headed to the hospital to check on Michael. His condition had worsened since the night before, and he had to be hospitalized again. This was the 7th hospitalization. Rachel's heart was heavy, and the content of her consultation with the lawyer wouldn't leave her mind. When she parked her car in the hospital parking lot, Rachel noticed that her mother Dorothy's old sedan was already parked there. Sister Jessica was probably with her too. What would normally be a reassuring sight was now only a source of anxiety. She entered through the hospital's main entrance and took the elevator to the 4th-floor pediatric ward. The hallway was relatively quiet for the evening hours. Nurses were busily moving about, and children's voices could be heard in the distance. Michael's room was at the end of the hallway. As she walked along, checking the room number plates, Rachel stopped. She could hear voices coming from the hospital room. The door was about half open, and the conversation inside could be heard leaking into the hallway. It was her mother's and sister's voices. They were speaking in low voices, but in the quiet hallway, it was clear enough to understand. "We can't continue this much longer," Jessica's voice said. Rachel might be getting suspicious. "It's fine," her mother Dorothy replied. "It'll be over soon." Rachel's heart began pounding violently. What would be over? She hid behind the hospital room door and listened carefully. But what if that child says something? Jessica's voice carried anxiety. "Michael doesn't remember anything. The drug should have made his memory fuzzy too," her mother's voice was cold. "Besides, even if he says something, who would believe the rambling of a sick child?" Rachel took out her smartphone from her handbag with trembling hands. She opened the recording app and tapped the screen. Recording began. "Let's have him transferred next week," her mother continued. "At the state hospital, we have an acquaintance who's a doctor. We can have him write an appropriate medical certificate there." An appropriate medical certificate. A diagnosis that he has psychological problems. That way, Michael's testimony won't be believed. And Rachel won't be able to handle caring for her son anymore, so she'll probably put him in an institution. Rachel gasped. Her mother and sister were planning to have Michael committed to a psychiatric hospital. If we don't get caught, that's the end of it, Jessica laughed. Rachel will suffer for the rest of her life, never knowing what caused her son's illness. That's right. That child needed punishment. Her mother's voice had a chilling coldness. After marrying David, she started looking down on us. Through Michael, we taught Rachel about reality. It was fun at first, Jessica continued. Watching that child suffer was somehow refreshing. Seeing Rachel desperately nursing him was amusing too. But lately it's become troublesome, her mother sighed. We have to increase the drug dosage to get results, and Rachel is starting to get suspicious. Let's finish this quickly. Rachel felt tears streaming down her cheeks. To think that her own mother and sister were such cruel people. They had been using her son's suffering as revenge against her. What about the medical records? Jessica asked. Already arranged. My old colleague is at the records hospital, so she'll modify the past records a bit. We'll add records showing that Michael had psychological problems before. Amazing, Mom. You really are an experienced nurse. When you've been in this industry for 40 years, you build up connections. Even doctors will cooperate if you give them appropriate compensation. Rachel continued recording in disbelief. Her mother was even planning to bribe medical professionals. But will we really not get caught? Jessica still seemed worried. It's fine. Rachel would never suspect us. Normally, people don't think that their mother and sister would abuse their child, her mother answered confidently. That's true. And there's no evidence. Exactly. We've always acted carefully. The drugs we gave Michael were types that are quickly expelled from the body, and we carefully adjusted the amounts. We focused on psychological abuse so there would be no physical traces left on his body. Rachel's body shook with anger. The two had been treating her son like a complete test subject. What about the transfer procedures next week? Jessica asked for details. I'll explain to Rachel that more specialized treatment is necessary. If I say that the state hospital has better facilities and long-term hospitalization is possible, she'll be convinced. Meanwhile, we can make Michael's memory even more fuzzy. That's right. Under the name of drug therapy, we'll have them administer drugs that affect memory. Then he won't be able to remember the past. Rachel was horrified. The two were trying to erase her son's memories. What if Rachel comes to visit? We'll restrict visiting hours. If we explain that because he's psychologically unstable, contact with family should be limited, Rachel will understand. Eventually, Michael might even forget about Rachel. The two women's laughter echoed in the hallway. Rachel felt nauseous. But just in case, let's take out some insurance, her mother continued. If Rachel notices something, we'll prepare evidence to question her mental state. Single mother stress, psychological instability from her son's illness, we could use those reasons to possibly restrict her parental rights. That's a brilliant idea, Jessica was impressed. Then we would become Michael's guardians. Exactly. And we'll put him in an appropriate facility, and we'll be free. We'll let Rachel carry the grief of losing her son for the rest of her life. Rachel had reached her limit. While continuing to record, she quietly left the area. She couldn't enter the hospital room. If she saw her son, she would surely lose control of her emotions. She took the elevator down to the first floor and went outside the hospital. Sitting in her car in the parking lot, she stopped the recording. It was a 15-minute recording. Her mother and sister's horrifying plan was all recorded. Rachel dialed the lawyer's phone number with trembling hands. Anderson speaking. This is Rachel Harper. It's an emergency. Can I see you right away? What happened? I got decisive evidence. I recorded a conversation between my mother and sister. They're trying to put my son in a psychiatric hospital and erase his memory. She could hear the lawyer gasp on the other end of the phone. Please come to the office immediately. Let's contact the police and Child Protective Services. Ensuring your child's safety is the top priority. Attorney Anderson's office was still lit past 8 o'clock at night. After listening to the audio file Rachel had recorded, the lawyer nodded with a serious expression. This is perfect evidence. Child abuse, drug administration, falsification of medical records, bribery. Multiple serious crimes are recorded, Attorney Anderson said while saving the file. Let's contact the police and Child Protective Services right away. That same night, Rachel was questioned at the police station. The recorded audio, hidden camera footage, and Michael's blood test results, all evidence was submitted. Detective Inspector Thompson, an experienced woman, listened seriously to Rachel's story. Ma'am, you took very courageous action, Inspector Thompson said in a gentle tone. First thing tomorrow morning, we'll take protective measures for your child. And we'll request arrest warrants for the perpetrators. The next morning, Rachel headed to the hospital. Ms. Miller, a social worker from Child Protective Services, accompanied her. Michael seemed to be feeling better than the night before. Mama. Michael sat up in bed and looked at his mother. Michael, it's okay now. Mama has solved everything, Rachel gently embraced her son. Ms. Miller spoke gently to the child. Michael, you've been through very scary experiences. But you're safe now. The people who did bad things will never hurt you again. At that moment, the hospital room door opened. Her mother Dorothy and sister Jessica entered. The two saw the unfamiliar woman next to Rachel and showed wariness. Rachel, who is this person? Her mother asked. This is Ms. Miller from Child Protective Services, Rachel answered quietly. I had some consultation about Michael's case. Jessica's face changed color. Consultation about what? At that moment, two police officers appeared in the hospital room. Inspector Thompson and her partner, Detective Johnson. You are Dorothy Williams and Jessica Williams, correct? Inspector Thompson said in a stern voice. You are both under arrest on suspicion of child abuse. Her mother and Jessica's faces turned pale. What are you talking about? Her mother protested in a trembling voice. Yesterday evening, a conversation in this hospital room was recorded. Inspector Thompson took out recording equipment. Drug administration to Michael, plans for forced psychiatric hospitalization, falsification of medical records. We have evidence of everything. When the recording was played, both women's faces turned white. Their own voices speaking their horrifying plans echoed through the hospital room. This is wiretapping. Isn't that illegal? Jessica shouted. Recording conversations in public places is legal, Attorney Anderson entered the hospital room and explained. Moreover, it's a legitimate act to protect the child's safety. Rachel, what have you done? Her mother glared at her daughter. Betraying your family like this. You're the ones who betrayed us, Rachel answered with tears flowing but in a firm voice. Doing such horrible things to my son, your grandson. That child was impudent. Jessica flew into a rage. After you married David, you started looking down on us. Does that justify abusing a 10-year-old child? Ms. Miller said in a harsh tone. When the police officer tried to handcuff Jessica, she began struggling. Let go of me. I didn't do anything wrong. You don't think using drugs to make a child suffer is wrong? Inspector Thompson said calmly. Her mother Dorothy seemed to give up and dropped her shoulders. I was just managing Michael's health as a nurse. You call administering laxatives and painkillers without permission health management? Attorney Anderson showed the documents. Blood tests detected drugs. That child's testimony can't be trusted, her mother made a last resistance. He's confused from his illness. At that moment, Michael began speaking in a small voice. Aunt Jessica made me drink strange medicine. Grandma was there too. Her son's voice was trembling but clearly audible. Even when I didn't want to, they forced me to drink it. It was very bitter, and after drinking it, my stomach always hurt. All the adults in the hospital room were moved by her son's brave testimony. And then, they threatened to kill me if I told Mama, Michael continued. But I'm not scared anymore. Mama will protect me. Jessica completely lost control, causing a commotion that brought nurses running. Her mother Dorothy was handcuffed in silence. I'm sorry I couldn't protect my son, Rachel bowed her head to Ms. Miller. You are an admirable mother, Ms. Miller answered gently. You noticed the truth and had the courage to act. That's what matters most. A few days later, the arrest of her mother and Jessica was widely reported in local news. With the headline, Child Abuse Case by Former Nurse and Daughter, the details of the case were reported. The neighbors were shocked because on the surface, they had seemed like an exemplary family. The trial began 3 months later. Rachel and Michael testified as witnesses. Michael, though trembling with fear, told the truth. The hidden camera footage and recorded conversations became decisive evidence. I sentenced defendant Jessica Williams to 5 years imprisonment for child abuse, the judge read the verdict. I sentenced defendant Dorothy Williams to 3 years imprisonment as an accomplice. In the courtroom, Jessica showed no sign of remorse to the end. I hated that child, she shouted. Her mother Dorothy apologized in her final statement, but it was merely formal, concerned with appearances. After the verdict, Rachel was surrounded by reporters. What did you learn through this incident? A reporter asked. Even if there are blood relations, people who hurt children are not family, Rachel answered clearly. True family are people who love and protect each other. Michael recovered dramatically after the incident. Once the drug effects disappeared, he returned to being the bright boy he originally was. He returned to school and his cheerful figure playing baseball with friends came back. Mama, I'm really okay now, Michael said to his mother one night. The scary people are gone, and Mama protects me. Rachel embraced her son while crying. The long battle was over, and peace had finally returned. She had been able to reveal the truth and achieve justice. Most importantly, she had been able to restore her precious son's smile. The incident had a major impact on the local community. It became a catalyst for changing people's awareness about the importance of early detection of child abuse and the hidden dangers of abuse by family members. Rachel's courageous actions gave hope to many mothers. A year passed since the verdict. Jessica was serving her sentence in a state prison, but showed no signs of remorse. No one came to visit her, and she spent lonely days. Even the other inmates despised her as the woman who abused children. She still didn't think she had done anything wrong and considered it just bad luck. Her mother Dorothy was housed in a facility for minor offenders. For her, who had valued appearances above all else, being reported in newspapers and on television was the ultimate humiliation. The gazes of neighbors, the loss of her place in church, and above all, the reality of losing her grandson devastated her. When she met Rachel in the visiting room, Dorothy offered a heartfelt apology for the first time. Rachel, I'm truly sorry. I was a failure as a mother and as a grandmother. However, Rachel's response was calm. I accept your apology, but I cannot forgive you. The wounds Michael received won't heal easily. Meanwhile, Michael had become remarkably healthy. After the incident, Rachel received counseling with her son, getting help from specialists to heal the emotional wounds. Once the drug effects disappeared, Michael's natural brightness returned. At school too, he was surrounded by friends and was active as the ace pitcher on the baseball team. Mama, I'm really okay, Michael smiled at his mother one evening after dinner. I don't have scary dreams anymore, and school is fun. While watching her son's growth, Rachel realized that she herself had changed through the incident. Through the case, she deeply understood that blood relations alone don't make family. She learned that true family are people who love each other, support each other, and protect each other no matter what. A year and a half after the incident, Rachel and Michael moved to a new town. It was a small town in Vermont, a peaceful place surrounded by beautiful mountains. Rachel was put in charge of managing a local cafe, and Michael made many friends at his new school. In their new life, Rachel began volunteer work supporting victims of child abuse. Using her own experience, she counseled mothers in similar situations. At monthly support group meetings, Rachel's testimony gave hope to many people. At first, I couldn't bring myself to suspect my family, Rachel spoke to the gathered mothers. But I learned that the child's safety is most important. Even if there are blood relations, people who hurt children are not true family. One of the participants asked, "How were you able to find the courage?" "I wanted to protect my son's smile, that was my sole motivation," Rachel smiled. A mother's love gives you the strength to overcome any difficulty. Michael also sometimes participated in abuse prevention lectures at school. He conveyed to children his own age the importance of consulting with adults when scary things happen. Although he was initially afraid of speaking in public, he could now confidently share his experiences. "I went through scary things, but Mama protected me," Michael spoke to the children. If any of you experience unpleasant things, please consult with adults you trust. You don't need to endure it alone. One autumn evening, Rachel and Michael were walking by the lake. The sunset reflected beautifully on the water's surface, and their shadows stretched long. "Mama, we're a real family, aren't we?" Michael said, holding his mother's hand. "Of course we are, Michael," Rachel gently squeezed her son's hand back. "We're the best team. When I grow up, I want to be strong like Mama." "You're already strong enough. You were very brave through all of this." The two sat on a bench by the lake and spent quiet time together. Bird calls could be heard in the distance, and the wind gently caressed their cheeks. The pain of the past might never completely disappear, but a future full of hope awaited them. "Family isn't about blood relations, is it?" Michael murmured. "That's right. True family are people who cherish each other and protect each other." Rachel looked at her son. "Like us." As the sunset sank behind the mountains, mother and son took each other's hands and headed home. The new life they had built in their new town, and their unshakable bond. For Rachel and Michael, this was the beginning of true family. A bright future spread before the two who had overcome their difficulties.